Welcome, everyone, to episode 5 of The Visitor on this very hot September 21st. It is hot here. I got all these electronics running. Today, we're going to be talking to Steven of This Uncanny Earth. As you know, before he was the intern, but now he's our full blown co host. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the one, the only, Steven, no longer the
Hello.
intern, but Steven, the co host. What's up, Steven? How are we doing today?
Hello. Good. Just
Good,
got back
good.
from work.
Oh yeah, that was me this morning,
Yep.
5 a.m. Working my tail off.
Yep.
Um, Tell us a little bit about yourself, Steven.
So my name is Steven. As most of you may know, I am on This Uncanny Earth with Rob. I started off as the intern, and for some weird reason, he decided to give me full co-host privileges.
I did
And now he lets me rant all I like. It's
all he
wonderful.
likes. All he likes. So, Steven, did you grow up in a specific religious background, or did you grow up in a non-religious background?
It's kind of tricky. Like, basically, my grandparents were highly religious, and I remember we used to go to church, every Sunday when I was a kid. But, as I kind of grew up a little bit, my parents weren't overly religious. My dad believes, but he doesn't, like go to church or anything. He's just like a believer. But I can understand that because, not to get too personal, but his dad was a preacher, so he kind of, I think personally for him it was just he wanted to separate himself a little bit from that, as he got older, since he had to work on it so much when he was a kid. And my mom, she's not really a believer as far as I'm aware, and I kind of grew up with, my grandparents believing and my mom not so much, and that's kind of how I started off when I was younger.
Now, was that her parents, or that's her parents? I take it.
Yeah, that's her adoptive parents from when
Okay.
she was younger. She was adopted. So those were
Okay.
her
Okay.
adoptive parents, but they've been around my whole life. So
Right. Right. So, what denomination is your father, if I may ask?
Christian, I believe. I
Like
don't know like specifics. I'm
like
not sure.
Lutheran or Methodist, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That
I
sort
don't
of
really
thing.
know the
Okay.
specifics.
That's fine. So, what is your interpretation of faith? Like to you, if I were to say, Stephen, do you have faith? What are you going to answer back?
I think faith, in my personal definition, is a strong belief in a certain thought or ideal, whether it's a typical religion, spirituality, or just the fact that, I don't know, I like mayonnaise and a lot of people don't. That's my faith in mayonnaise.
Huh? And listen, that is a strong faith because I
Yeah.
am very much. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's an okay condiment, but it has to be something that fits the condiment.
Yes,
You
I
know, a
will
lot of
agree with
people.
that. I will agree with that. Like mayonnaise is
Yeah.
not I'm not one of those people that'll put it on everything, but I
Mhm.
like it on burgers and, sandwiches.
Right, right. So using your analogy of mayonnaise, when you in
Yeah.
faith, you whenever you eat it, you have faith that it's going to not be spoiled. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? You're
you
gonna be
have
able to
faith that
open
it'll
it.
taste good and it'll
Right.
be what you remember.
And I think that's the key thing is everybody has faith, right?
Yeah.
You can be I've seen people be total atheists, but they still have faith that their paycheck's going to come through on a
Yeah.
Friday, or that they're going to get hours for the week, or that they're going to eat tomorrow. You know what I mean? They have faith that that's going to happen, and they don't
Yeah.
realize that. And I think it's kind of
Ironic.
interesting. It's a little bit
Yeah.
ironic, but I also think it's interesting because we use faith every day.
Yeah.
You know, myself as a universalist, um, I have faith that everything is going to be made whole. I have faith that when I wake up tomorrow, God's going to provide me with what I need, not so much what I want, but what I need,
Yeah.
and I can rely on Him for that. How about yourself? Where do you stand in terms of like your day to day provisions being provided for? Do you attribute that to a power like God, or do you attribute to like manifestation? Because I know a lot of people. The
Yeah.
big thing nowadays is manifesting.
Yeah.
Um, what
Well,
are your
my
thoughts on that?
my view is extremely complicated, but I'll
That's
try
fine.
to I'll try to, keep it as simple as I can. So my personal viewpoint is I believe that everything will be provided for me, but I have a few stipulations in that belief. I don't believe it's because I'm a good person or, there's any God that personally cares about me as an individual. I believe that everything will be provided because of my spiritual beliefs, I have come to start calling myself a Gnostic Taoist, And as a result, a big part of Taoism is like Dudism. If you've ever heard of that with
I
Jeff
have.
Bridges,
Yes,
you
I know
know,
what it is.
so that's where I started at. I actually started off discovering Dudism from the Big Lebowski, and then I just kind of studied a little deeper into Dudism, found Taoism, studied deeper into that, and recently found Gnosticism through studying into simulation theory. And I kind of incorporate all of that together into one big belief system. And that's more recent. But ever since I was a kid, I've had this weird, strange belief that only one single human on this entire planet is actually real. And that person, I think one of us is actually in a coma or some sort of dreamlike state, and we're lucid dreaming. And originally, we started off alone, and we knew that we were dreaming. And then we started creating tulpas,
Mhm.
thoughts that give in shape, because we were lonely. Whoever the original human was, they got lonely in their, comatose dream. And so they started creating all these tulpas. And over time, they create their tulpas eventually had been here for so long because it's a perpetual dream, never ending because, we're in a coma. And they've been here for so long that the tulpas started to think they were real. And they started to create their own tulpas. And it just spiraled out of control. And now we have billions upon billions of tulpas and one single human. And that one single human is God.
Okay.
That's kind of
It,
how I look at it.
I will say that is a very interesting belief. I
Yeah.
will say that.
Very unique.
Um, Very unique. Yes, like it fits your character as a
Yeah.
person, which that's fine.
And
We
like
all have to do what we have to do. But no, go ahead,
yeah.
please.
And like one more aspect of it that I wanted to, specify is another reason that I believe everything will be provided is because I believe that, well, I listened to an artist called Mod Sun, and he always had this catchphrase, kind of like a catchphrase, and he said, life is like a movie. And the way he sees it is basically, God, whatever you interpret that to be, is up there watching us like our life is a movie. And if our life is a movie and someone is watching us, whether you believe it's God or, whatever you believe, if there is something up there watching us, then we want to make this life entertaining, don't we? And if we make our life entertaining and, worth watching, then this God or whatever you believe in will give you exactly what you need to continue your movie.
That's a very interesting way to put it. So you're more of an Azathothian, is what I really should call it, because in Lovecraft terminology, Azathoth is the sleeping one. And if he wakes up,
Ooh,
everybody becomes
yeah.
extinct.
I like
So
that.
it's very Azathothian of
Yeah.
you. Made
I'll
that
have
up.
to
So
look
if
into
anybody
that.
steals that, I'm going to be upset.
And
No,
we have timestamps right here, so he has evidence.
I do have evidence. So, how do you think that has helped you through your life? Like when you sit back and you're like, man, this is where I am in my life up to this point. Like, when did you let me ask let's ask this first. When did you start on this journey that you're on now? Like when was that? When was that something you said, you know what? This is what I want to focus all my
Yeah.
attention on. I'm curious. I need to know what's going on. When was that? When was that point for you?
Mm, honestly, I had 2 points like that recently over the last few years. One, obviously, was probably, when I started the show with you guys, because I started looking into more stuff and, doing research on stuff. And I just got in even more interested than I already was and just started looking deeper into this kind of stuff. And then Spider kind of helped me, look a little bit deeper into the spiritual side with his, what was it, Saturday spiritualist that he used to do,
Yeah, I remember that.
and that kind of helped me look a little bit deeper into some of the spiritual stuff, like the Jedi religion. That one's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've heard of that one too. I've heard
Yeah,
I've studied up on a lot of religions that don't fit the norm of
yeah.
religious beliefs.
But so I started looking deeper into Taoism, and I found that I agreed with a lot of Taoist stuff. Specifically, I think one of the things that I like most about Taoism is just the kind of go with the flow attitude, and whatever's
Okay.
going to happen is going to happen. And they're not very strict. I don't feel like Taoists are very strict. They're kind of just like, go with the flow, let life happen.
But
And
I think and I don't mean to
yeah,
interrupt you here. I
you're
think I
good.
think a little bit of strictness is good though. I mean, because you do have some of those belief systems that are parallel to Taoism. You know what I mean? But they just maybe
Yeah.
do a little something else because you have Shaolin monks, you have a lot of those warrior monks that train and train and
Yeah.
train and make their body pretty much armor, right?
Yeah.
And I think that there's an interesting dichotomy between that and something like Taoism that's more of a go with the flow type thing,
Yeah.
as to where Buddhism is more of like a strict, especially when you get into like your sects. It's a
Yeah.
very like you got to shave your head. We get up at
Yeah.
6, we practice, we commune together. It's a monastic life is really
Well,
what it is.
that's the interesting thing to me, though, now that you mention it, is, you speak about Buddhists being, more strict, and that's one reason why, can appreciate their ideals and their flows, but I don't necessarily appreciate the strictness or the rigidity of their system. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, as, in terms of relating to Taoism, because I actually see, personally, I view Taoism as a freedom that actually allows me to focus more on certain things because I'm not worried about other stuff. Like, for example, a personal example, a few weeks, uh, well, it's been more than a few weeks, probably a few months ago, a month or two ago, I was at work one day, and work is work. You don't have
I
to
do.
like it, you don't have to enjoy it. And I was just thinking about how sick and tired I was of work, and then I switched my mind, and I was like, wait a minute, put the Taoist lock in there, and I started thinking about that and Gnosticism and all that together, and I was like, you know what, and I just sprayed myself in the face with the water hose, because I was like, none of this really matters. It really doesn't matter, because, like, look at how many years this planet has been around and how long the average human lifespan is. Nothing any singular human does, 9 times out of 10, is really going to make a long lasting difference, especially not your 9 to 5 job. So, whatever it is that, you do for a living, if you appreciate it, that's great. But if you don't appreciate it, then try to just not worry about it, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, and it's really not going to make a difference one way or the other.
Now, I can see where you would get that sort of mindset, and I get it, right? It
Yeah.
makes sense. But I think we as human beings, that's something that we are prone to, right? And when you read biblical scripture, it's almost like that aspect of doubt is the adversary working his way into you because
Yeah.
of the simple fact that your spine is supposed to be on that of God. You're supposed to be moving the right way. You're supposed
Yeah.
to be doing things the right way. And when you step out of bounds, right, as we all have before, you get kind of pushed back in to bounds, if that makes sense, in a
Yeah.
very correct way, not in a jostling, jarring kind of way,
Yeah,
but
but
more of
like
like
very
a
subtle.
yes, it's like almost like a nudge, like, "No, no, no, you gotta
Yeah.
go over here," and I think faith plays a big portion,
Yeah.
of that, metaphysical pie, as it were, and I think that without faith, it's funny, I was just having a conversation with my folks about midlife crises
Yeah.
and people who have them, and I have to wonder if we correlated people who are grateful for their life, who wake up happy every day, wake up grateful and ready for the day, if those people have midlife crises.
Maybe that's why they're able to wake up and go through the day and be so, complacent and happy, is because they've already had their midlife crisis and they've
Maybe
already dealt with it. And now they realize that, hey, it could always be a little worse.
they could 100% be it could be always be a little worse, but could always
Yeah.
be a little better. And
Yeah.
I think we don't talk about that enough. We don't talk about the fact that it could always be a little better. We're so we equate it with hey, at least I'm not doing bad. Like it's synonymous for our
Yeah.
lives to think that. But I think we should look at hey, it could also be better. What can I do to make it better? You know what I mean? Because what I
Yeah.
really love about my beliefs are, a lot of people say, well, because you believe, because I don't believe in eternal punishment. I just don't. It's not something that a loving God, in my opinion, would put on people that He loves,
Yeah.
right? Um, so for me, it's at the end of the day, it's not believing in eternal punishment doesn't give me a license to just go act however I want to, and I think a lot of people get confused on that. They think, well, you can just do whatever you want. No, because now that I'm trying to do better and I'm trying to do better via God, I have to act a certain way. I
Yeah.
have to become a certain way because if I don't, then I'm going to fall again and fall again. And I'm going to rise up each time because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to keep going.
Yeah.
You're supposed to
Learn from your
work for it,
mistakes.
of course. If we just sit complacently and don't work towards something, you can't attain it. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, things are given to people, but we work for ours. You know what I mean? We get up, we go to work, we make sure that we pay the bills on time, pay this on time, pay that on time. We make sure that that's what we're doing because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to have some structure to your life. And I think it's good. I think it's good to go out there and work. Even if you hate it, hey, at least you're working, at least you're doing something. At least
Yeah.
you're putting forth some effort into society or into your life. So, if you want something better, you got to go get it. It's
Yeah.
not going to come to you. And that's what I like about, my beliefs. It's like, no, I can't just go act how I want to act. I can't just go out there and act
Yeah.
like a fool. I have rules that I have to live by. And I have to live by those rules or once again, I get pushed back in, you know. Um but like I said, I appreciate that you have a different aspect on this topic because it helps me learn. It
Yeah.
helps me sort of piece things together about how people are. Now, were you always a spiritual person, or did that just is that
No.
something that built up? Because I know
It
you said
yeah.
a couple years ago, and you had talked to our good buddy Spider.
Mhm.
Um, but even when you were young, did you ever think about there's got to be something else, like
Like
what's out there type stuff?
I used to believe when I was younger, not like strict or anything like that, not
Of
like
course,
a deep believer, but I was raised to believe in God, so I did. And then
of course.
eventually, I can't remember exactly which day. I think it was just like you said, like a gradual buildup. I just remember one day thinking about it, and I was like, you know, there's no evidence. I don't see the evidence to support this. It doesn't make sense to me anymore. Because, I was growing up and I was getting older and I was starting to think in deeper levels and like critical thinking and stuff. And I'm like, and I started to think about it and I was like, well, I've been raised to believe this, but why do I believe this? Because I actually believe it or because I was told to believe this. And I
Hmm.
realized that I didn't actually believe it, and I was just told to believe it. And I literally, one night, I remember one night, I actually did. I prayed to God and I told him, give me some evidence that you're real, or I'm not going to believe in you anymore. And I didn't get any evidence that convinced me that he was real, so I stopped believing.
Now, I, on the other hand, believe just because of
Yeah.
everything I've been through and being pulled out of so many fires because I am hard headed, as it were, and stubborn. So I've had to be pulled out of a couple
Yep.
things, sometimes kicking and screaming against my will. But that's what God does. That's what He does for people. He kind of pulls them out. And I think a lot of time what's interesting is people have these crises where they say, okay, if you're real, show me something. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But to me, now this is my opinion, I think it's somewhat insulting because, you know, to me now,
Yeah.
he proves it to me by waking me up in the morning. He proves it to me by making sure that I'm healthy, making sure I have a good mindset. And people say, oh, that's you, this, that, and the third. But I don't personally believe that. I believe that
Yeah.
that's God working to make me a better person. But on that same token, I don't go throw it in everybody's face. I'm not like,
Yeah.
if people want to talk about it, we can talk about it. But if not, I would prefer to let my actions show that, hey, he's a kind person. And then once you get to know me, then you realize, okay, he believes in God. He has these values. He has these central beliefs that are very important to him.
Yeah.
And I think that we all kind of established that. And I think I've established it a lot later in life. I won't say later in life. I think I've established it more so as I've gotten older because I'm realizing that life is too short, man, for certain things, and
Yeah.
and to be always upset or always mad or always angry at everything. It doesn't work. Like it's just you're basically killing your body because I believe I'm a person. You should be a
And your
positive
soul.
person. 100%. But your soul can't be destroyed, and that's a whole nother conversation
Yeah.
we can have. But to me, it just it signifies that God is there, and listen, if anybody, I could be one of those people that say, "Hey, I don't believe in God." I'm glad I don't. I'm glad I believe, but I don't force that belief on anybody else. If you ask, we'll talk about it all day. I'll tell you everything, and I'll guide you if need be, but that is not my job to bring you to God. It is God, that's what he does. And a lot of times Christians like to take the victory lap when it comes to uh saving souls,
Yeah.
as it were. That was a big thing. It was called saving souls, but we don't do that. So God does, because they're gods and they're
Yeah.
already saved. But that's a whole different conversation. Um, Having met myself in Spider and realizing that both of us are on dynamically opposite ends of our spectrum, how has that sort of fueled your beliefs or sort of changed your mind since interacting
Yeah.
and learning about both of our faiths? How does that
It
how does that
has
how does that change?
it has given me a much better opinion on religious people in general, because before I met you in Spider, I have had some, bad experiences with religious people when I was younger.
Of
For
course.
example, when I was in high school, I had social media. I was on Facebook one day and I came out and I told all my, high school friends at the time, and I was like, well, I've decided I'm atheist. And just like that, I instantly lost like 90% of all my friends, and they all told me I was a terrible person and I'm going to burn in hell and I'm so evil and I'm such a terrible person. And from that day forward, I was like, yep, militant atheism it is. Right up
Okay.
until, like maybe shortly before I met you, I was kind of, in that I don't like religious people because they're mean and they're
Okay.
cruel, and I don't need a religion to tell me how to be moral.
I think for me, um, speaking from my experience, I don't disagree with you because I've been through so many churches growing up,
Yeah.
and you see like the pastor will come in and he'll be letting you know, hey, you got to believe in God or else this, that, and the third, that sort of thing.
They
But
threaten
then,
people.
but then his kids, right, are running amok and getting into all
Oh,
kinds of trouble. So you're telling me to behave, but yet you're not fixing your own household. And it never stuck with me either. Like I would go to church and it never stuck. I always believed in God. That was never
yeah.
an issue because I'd been through so much, and I'm like, he still got me. He's still taking care of me. I still believe that. I'll always believe that to this day. Um, but for me, it was like, you know, other Christians, they can be some of the meanest people you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
And to prove a point, if you've ever seen a Christian talk about hell, they get kind of excited about it. Like they're quick
Yeah.
to damn other people to hell, not realizing that they're committing a sin themselves, and they get happy about
Yeah.
this, and it's a gleeful thing. And I'm thinking that's
Love
not
thy
what God
neighbor.
wants you to do. God said, one of His greatest commandments: love thy Lord God and
Yeah.
love thy neighbor like thyself. And a lot of people don't do that, but I think more so Christians don't do that. They get in their high and mighty in their big multi-million dollar churches, and that's not how this is supposed to work. That's not how it was supposed to work whatsoever. But we come to this conversation, what, because I can never be an atheist person,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't make sense to me. There's just too many mathematical factors in play, that science has proven, that
Yeah.
makes me think, no, it's not there. there
And
is there is
if
a
you'll
God.
if you'll let me interject real quick,
Please do.
I will actually verify that, and I'll agree with you and give you a few examples that I've noticed. Like when we were talking about the Fibonacci spiral and, the golden ratio. Those numbers are too perfect to not be created by a design of
Agreed.
intelligence. And if you really want to look at it, they have scientific evidence to prove that God is real, regardless of what anyone believes. They literally have a particle smaller than like I think it's smaller than an atom, the Bison Higgs particle, and they
Mhm.
called it the God particle because it was the building block of all matter, which they previously thought was the atom. And if you read the Bible, correct me if I'm wrong, but does it not say that God put a small spark or piece of himself within every human being.
The divine spark,
He
which
created man in his
right,
image.
right, and that spark, they speak more of that in Gnosticism than they do in regular canonical Christianity. But
Yeah,
I find the concept personally fascinating because I do believe that.
because
I do believe we all have the divine spark within
yeah,
us. That's
yeah,
God. That's his implant, or that's his imprint
and
upon
that's
us.
actually one of the most interesting things I wanted to mention now that we're talking about this
Mhm.
is in terms of me believing in simulation theory and you believing in God, at the end of the day, what's the difference? Because the way I interpret it, God is the designer of the simulation. So I do believe in God. I just call him a designer or the architect, the grand architect.
So for me, it's more this can't be a simulation because
Yeah.
I need to be wealthy, be able to fly, superhero
Yeah.
stuff. So it's not a simulation for me. But once again, I'm not going to uh, tear down somebody else's um, beliefs because
Yeah.
everything will be made right with God in the end. And that's what I believe, that everybody and everything will be made whole again.
Yeah.
Um, because there was that separation. Once Adam sinned, there was that divide between man and God, and then Christ came in and sort of brought them back together and fixed that so that we can be around God. Because I would think that something that holy and something that good and that love,
Yeah.
you couldn't be around it because we have defects. We
Yeah.
have soul defects. Because of what we've done to people and what people have done to us, we become these shells. We all start
Shadows.
out innocent, as children and babies and such. And then as we get older, our hearts get a little colder or warmer. It just depends the type of person you are. But in my opinion, I think that our goal should be to be kinder to each other. You don't have to
Yeah.
like each other. You should like
And
each other, but at least be kind to each other. At
I
least be kind to each other.
ironically, in contrast, as I said, there are very many similarities to simulation theory and religion. Is That's essentially what in simulation theory, that is the goal of the simulation is to convince people to unify and unite and be more peaceful with each other. And that's why we have to keep resetting the simulation because we keep destroying each other.
Which is an interesting aspect because while I don't believe in the
Yeah,
the the simulation theory personally, I do believe that civilizations as a whole, you know, go through cycles. The flood
every
being a
12,000
cycle,
years.
the Tower of Babel, another one. Like those are significant breaks in
Yeah,
civilizations that rebuild and redo that. I think though now it's a little bit harder just because technology. You know, the way technology works for us now. I'm not saying that they had any
yeah.
technology back then, the Baghdad
It was
battery,
different.
obviously. It was different. So
Yeah,
when that technology got wiped out, everybody got wiped out. Whole land masses were gone, rivers dried up. These things happen, so civilizations collapse and they
yeah,
move on, much like Roanoke. Roanoke, they pretty much uh, uh, melded with those
yeah,
around them, and that makes sense. And so I think, because I was talking to my father. I was like, hey, or was either my father or it was my buddy Lawrence, but we were talking about oh no, I'm sorry, it wasn't either of those two. It was another friend of mine. We were talking about like the Chaldeans, and we were talking about the Girgashites and the Jebusites and all of these people. And there were some that are in the Old Testament that are minor players. They're not on the grand central stage like the Canaanites were or the Persians were. These are smaller empires. And you have similarities in the New Testament with the different writings to the church fathers, because the disciples were essentially church fathers. They were the ones that started um, everything. And you come to a point where in the Bible, faith is like a very, very important thing. You live your life by it. You have faith that God will take care of you, or in your terms, you have faith that the intelligent designer will
yeah,
take care of you and provide you with what you need. Maybe not what you want, but what you need. And I think that's a very interesting thought because our beliefs, while different, they're sort of together in that
Yeah.
regard of, hey, you know what? I don't have to worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow's already been planned for me.
Same concept, different words.
Yes, yes, I agree. I think that, and the one thing I enjoy speaking with you is that we can have these conversations, and it doesn't get, um, combative.
Yeah.
It's not me going at you or you saying, well, your religion is stupid. And
Yeah.
because I've never wanted that with people. I've never wanted that with people of other faiths because I'm fascinated with other people's beliefs. Because to me, maybe you can give me an insight into something that I don't have insight into. And that helps. And, that's what God wants us to do
Yeah.
as Christians. We're supposed to learn about other people. We're supposed to understand other people. We're supposed to stand firm in our beliefs, but God doesn't want you walking around here like you don't know anything or like you don't have any sense in your head. You know, just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you can go do whatever you want. That's not how any of this works. I'm sorry to tell some of those lukewarm folks out there, that's not how this works. And it doesn't work like that with your philosophies either, because if you're not putting your all into it, you're not going to get back what you don't put into it.
Yeah.
Like yourself, you're going to college, you're going to work, you're trying to make your life better, right? And
Yeah.
you will see fruits of that labor because you're putting in the time and the effort, and you have faith that that fruit and that labor will be attended to. And that's the thing. A lot of people pull into a lot of new age teachings in terms of like, well, yeah, I just don't think bad things happen to me. And it's crazy, but then bad things don't happen to them because they just block it off. They block it out of their mind. Now,
That's science.
obviously, honestly, having,
Law of attraction is science, though.
3
It's just about
million,
learning. Oh, sorry.
if I had a bunch of millions, I probably wouldn't be stressing about a lot of things either,
Yeah.
unless, you're getting it from illicit means. But you're right. It is the law of attraction. And if you think about something enough, it will come to you. That's how it works. You attract what you are looking for, both good and evil.
Can I
And yeah, go ahead, please.
I wanted to specify something about that I think a lot of
Please.
people don't understand that can actually drastically increase the effectiveness if you're actively trying to use the law of attraction. So the way it was explained to me, I read the book, The Secret, all that, whatever.
Mhm.
And one of my friends convinced me to read it, and I read it, and I was like, okay, whatever. And I was like, and I started thinking about it, and I was like, I don't want this to happen. I don't want that to happen. I
Yes.
don't. And then you know what happened? All the stuff I thought I didn't want to happen started happening
Yes.
because I misunderstood. It's not about hearing words like want or don't want. The
Mhm.
universe doesn't hear the context, it only hears the main focus of your thoughts. So if you think, I don't want to get a ticket, I don't want to get a ticket, you know what you're going to get? A
I take it.
ticket.
Yeah.
So instead of thinking like that, you have to think, I'm going to get home safely and,
Yes.
completely fine.
I'm gonna make it home. I'm gonna do
Yeah.
100 on the freeway and not get pulled over by a police
Yeah.
officer. No,
Oh,
I'm
you
kidding.
said
Don't do that.
not. You said not. You
Yeah, I
broke
did.
it.
I did. Yeah, but that's only if I'm going 100.
Yeah,
I don't go 100.
I'm gonna go 100 miles per hour and get home safely. That's
I hope so.
just stop.
I want
Stop it
that to
there.
happen. I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the interesting key because we look at ask and it shall be given to you. Ask your father what you need and he will take care of you. And that's what is interesting to me because I'm living proof that God works, and people say, well, I don't believe, and that's okay. Once again, I don't get into with atheists. I don't get into it with Orthodox Christians who think that they know the Bible from, verse 1 to Revelations, from Genesis to Revelations, because I'm not going to get into it with people like that. I want to sit down and have a good thought provoking conversation. You seem like you got some. What do you have for us, sir?
People who get tattoos not knowing about Leviticus 19:19 of their Bible verses.
Now, let me go ahead and stop you right there. So that was for the Jewish people. That was not for everybody else.
Ah,
That was
okay.
for the Jewish people because you have to understand something. Tattoos dying of clothes, if that kind of stuff gets into your skin, this is common sense stuff.
Yeah.
This is why
It's
I don't
poison, right?
understand. Yes, I don't understand why people haven't understood that the Old Testament, a lot of the stuff that God said, hey, do not do this, would lead to societal collapse, right? Don't eat shellfish. Okay, why? Let's look at it like this. If you eat raw shellfish, it can very much kill you. If you eat raw pork, it can very much kill you. They say it's because of the cloven or hooved animal, but I think it's because it could kill you. Dying of skin, it could kill you. If that leaches
Yeah.
into your body, into your bloodstream, it's over. These are scientific things that people thought God was being harsh about. But if you want people to survive, because we got to remember these were tent dwelling nomads, specifically, and then they're going out and creating civilizations. You see what I'm saying? They're moving
Yeah.
on and becoming bigger and bigger. But at the beginning, they had to have those laws and rules because if we go into the New Testament, right, it's not what goes in and what comes out. It's that narrative of if something clean comes in, something clean should come out, right?
Like
um
alchemy.
yes, yes, a in a roundabout way, yes, because you're changing something and it's a spiritual change. It's not lead to gold, but it is in terms of a lead heart to a gold heart. It's increasing that thought process, the knowledge and the wisdom, because there's knowledge and wisdom all over the Bible that people think, this book's just telling me what to do.
Oh no, there's hidden encodings in the Bible, and some people, myself included, believe the Bible is actually an alchemical text.
I mean, I've heard it too. There's a lot of symbology
Yeah.
in the scriptures, when it's talking about uh
Water
you
to
know
wine.
everything in this garden is good to eat, but this thing, do not eat this thing. If you eat this thing, you're going to become like us. And so I'm like, I think, and this is just something I will personally say, I think if mankind doesn't bite the apple, right, I think later on we probably would have been privy to the information, but I think we had to be tested first to see if we were going to do it. If we could listen.
Ooh, I like that. Resonance testing to see if people are worthy of the information.
Yes, and mankind wasn't.
I've gone
Because
through something like that.
if we really sit back and look at it, if we look at biblical scriptures and we look at it symbolically, a lot of times there's some fantastic symbolism that people just go right over. You know what I mean? Or there's
Yeah.
laws and rules that people go over that they think, oh, that's not cool. I'm taken back to times when whole populations were wiped out, and you have to think if one person in that population remains alive, they're gonna go on. They're coming for you. You know, you can't wipe out a whole population, leave a couple people because they will come back.
Yeah.
You taking your so I understand this. And this is once again, we have to understand this is war times. This isn't just like you walk down the street and you go to Subway, you get a latte. No, you heard your sheep to one way, and you were a people, and you had to unite against foreign invaders that were coming in. Like Goliath and the Rephaim and all of these giants that came in, and the one thing that a lot of time they didn't have in the Bible was faith. I'm prompted to when it talks about the ark because people needed a representation. They
And
couldn't
the
do it off their own. They
and the
needed a representation.
the fact that they didn't have faith is what got them all killed.
For the most part, not all of them, but like
Yeah.
a lot of times. Well, not so much killed, but punished
Okay. What
because
I
you
meant
couldn't
was like
even go ahead.
what I meant was like if they had faith and they had trusted Noah and believed and had faith in him and had faith that
Mhm.
he was speaking for God, then a lot more of them would have survived.
Yes, but I mean, you know, thank God that wasn't us because we could have been the ones like, this dude's building a boat. It ain't gonna rain. This guy's building a boat, but they don't know what's coming.
Maybe I'm the one
They
building
don't
the boat now.
understand. Maybe.
Maybe we're
Um,
building the boat.
I think that for me, uh, because I'm a person who believes that the flood story had multiple survivors,
Yeah.
not just Noah and his family. And a lot of Christians will probably be angry with this, but I tell you why. Because you would have incest, and
Yep.
incest isn't good. It's scientifically not good. So God's not going to take something that's scientifically not good and subject his people to it.
Okay.
This is why I think other people lived after the flood. Go ahead, please.
You
Yes.
you know what I gotta ask now since you brought it up.
Please. Please do.
Adam and Eve. I
Yes.
thought they were basically brother and sister.
No, there were two people who tended this is what I think.
Yeah.
There are two people who tended God's garden. Okay, but there
Okay.
was nations that were around that garden. Nations that got fed, nations that got help, nations
By the
that were
garden.
able to eat. The garden was basically, in my opinion, a giant food share.
Okay.
You came to get food, and then they tendered the garden. They made sure
Yeah.
everything was good, right? But also Adam and Eve are representations of man and
And
woman.
woman.
Yes, which makes sense because once again,
Duality.
you if we look at when Cain slayed his brother Abel, right?
Okay.
And he says, "If you send me over there, they will kill me." Who is they? Who's
Adam and
they?
Eve.
No, it wasn't
No?
Adam and Eve. No. That's why God put the mark on Cain so that Cain wouldn't be killed in these places. You have to wonder who were the people because Adam and Eve would just been two people,
Yeah.
right? There wouldn't have been it
They
wouldn't
wouldn't
have
have stood a
been a thing.
chance.
Well, it's not so much that. I think it's more along the lines of there's civilizations around and we need to look at
Yeah.
that. And you know, the whole Bible is just it's a big book about having faith in God.
Yeah.
Not needing to question if he's going to be there, or not needing a physical representation like an Ark of a Covenant or a Ten Commandments,
Or
you
an
know,
apple.
or an apple. Because the people, you have to remember the people that were down there, they needed that. They needed the golden calf and they got complacent. Now, I don't know about you, but if I saw an ark with a big fire swirl coming out of it, or I see God's on the mountain talking to Moses, I'm going to become a believer.
Yeah.
I'm going to become a, you don't got to say nothing else. I'm going to get away from all these people over here with their golden calf and I'm going to go on my own. I'm going to go on my own because, seeing something like that
Just
and
don't
like
fall for Project Bluebeam.
seeing something like that would be amazing. Like seeing that, and then no, here comes Moses back down the hill, and he's white, and he just saw the hand of God. He didn't see God's face, and he was basically his hair white, all that. And I think that there's faith is very important to the early church fathers. It's important to us now. It was important then. These are people who believed and they received. They received whatever blessings those were. Whether that was a king role, whether that was to escape, whether that was to, when they put Daniel in the furnace, they had faith that God was going to take care of them, and He did. So, I just think that kind of stuff is fascinating to me. Um, but before we wrap up, I want to get something out of you. Where do you think, personally, you would be without your faith? Where do you think you would be?
Dead.
And I 100% agree with you. I do. I agree with you. If it wasn't for a faith that God would take care of me, I wouldn't be around.
Yep.
And that's hard to hear, but I think it's something we need to, because faith is the most important thing. At the beginning of the show, we were talking about how even atheists believe that something will happen for them. Like
Yeah.
if they go to work, they have faith that there's going to be a paycheck waiting
Whether
for
they
them
get
at
it
the
or
end of the
not.
week. Whether they get it or not, they have faith that as long as they go to work, they're going to receive a
Yeah.
paycheck. So I think faith as a whole is a very more widely used than people talk about.
Yeah.
You
Because they
know,
don't understand it properly.
no, and I don't want to necessarily say they don't understand it properly. They don't understand who it's coming from because in our society, God has been painted as a villain. He's this rampaging tyrant. When you read the Bible, and he's not a rampaging tyrant at all. He's taking care of his people in the Old Testament, which had to be done. Because if you look at how many times his people made mistakes and he had to give them, a spanking, as it were, it's throughout. And even then, they still didn't believe.
Still didn't believe after the Ark of the Covenant, after David, after Solomon, after all of these things that God showed them. I think for me too, if we go back in Joshua, when God actually stopped the sun from moving, and it's mirrored in the book of Jasher, which is crazy. It's mirrored in the book of Jasher, and it talks about the book of Jasher in Joshua. It says, as told in the other book, that this happened. And you go to that book and like, oh my goodness. And I think that's something that we as um, Christians, or we as religious folks, we need to do a lot more researching older religions. We need to do a lot more
Yeah.
researching of the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's me
Yeah.
personally. I couple everything in together. So like I've got the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I've got the Little Concordant New Testament and Old Testament, and I put those together because I think that they are. I don't think the Bible itself is complete. I think Constantine and all of them, the Council of Nicaea and all that, forbade that stuff getting out
Because
because
they
they
would give people too
knew
much power.
it would. Well, no, that's the thing. It wouldn't give people too much power. It'd give people the truth.
Yep.
If you don't have to, if
The truth gives you power, though.
yes, but at the same time, it would relinquish church power.
Mhm.
Because, oh, you mean I'm not going to burn for eternity? I should just be a better person and live a better life and have faith in God that God will take care of my needs. No, they're like, if you don't pay this amount of money, you're going to go to hell.
Yeah.
Or if you don't buy my books, or if you don't buy this and that. And Christ went into these churches and flipped tables. It's one of my favorite verses because they were selling sacrifices so that people could go in the temple and sacrifice. And he flipped out and was flipping tables and getting into it, getting down with it. And that's important. We need to do that more often, as everybody that has faith, we need to do that more often because I think personally that these big mega churches have sort of slandered Christianity because I even have the same question. Why do you have $1 million church? Why do you have all of this? And well, it's hope helping this and that and the third. Okay, that's fine. But what are you getting out of it?
Jesus
What are
would
you
not
getting out of the
approve.
word? I don't think so. No, I do not think
And
Jesus could
since
walk into to Joel Osteen's
yeah.
whatever that is, um, and be content with that. I don't think he'd be happy at all. And they say if Jesus came back now and went to church, they'd kick him out.
Okay, what if I told you,
Mhm,
what if Jesus is actually here walking among us already, reincarnated, but
mhm.
he has to stay hidden and remain hidden to protect himself because the current world doesn't have enough faith, and that's what gives Jesus his power?
I mean, I personally don't think that's the case.
Yeah.
Um,
Just a random idea I
well,
had.
that's fine. Listen, I think that he appeared in the Old Testament a couple times.
Yeah.
Melchizedek, I think, or Melchizedek. I always get the name a little messed up. Could have been the guy in the fourth person in the fire with Daniel and Daniel's friends. I think that was, and I think the man that wrestled Jacob, the angel that wrestled Jacob, I think was Christ as well. I think he does appear. Now, can I prove that? No, I can't. Not yet. Maybe one of these days, but not yet. But I think he's always been there as
Yeah.
sort of um, God's eyes on the ground. Not saying that God can't
Yeah.
see, but it's kind of like he had that mingled in so he could
Yeah.
learn
And I
about
think
mankind.
And I think you're right about that, and I think that, like I said a minute ago, my, random spontaneous idea, to further that a little bit more, I also think that maybe while he's out here hiding out right now, maybe he's helping guide other people towards doing great things to help the world gain more faith.
Okay, okay. We're getting out of here. Stephen, what would you like to say to sort of close out tonight's episode of The Visitor?
Hmm. I would like to say that regardless of what you believe, at the end of the day, we're all the same species, we're all human. So let's just get along with each other.
Yes, I listen. As a person who would love the same thing, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think there's not enough love in the world,
Yeah.
and that's the best. If you love somebody, you know what I mean. Um, it's loving your enemy. It's loving those that you don't like. You know what I mean? It's loving, okay, this person did XYZ and I don't want to love them, but God is telling me I have to. And it's tough because there's people but God knows this. He's known me since before I was in the womb. So I agree with you. I think people need to be more kind. I think that is quintessential. Love is quintessential to a better life, a better juxtaposition, a better disposition, not juxtaposition, a better disposition overall. I think it's just
It's a
that's it,
better
man.
problem.
That's it. Thank you, Stephen, for joining me on this episode of The Visitor.
Of
It
course.
was 100% an amazing conversation. I expected no less from you. I expected no less than a great conversation from you. So,
And with
Stephen,
no prep time.
no prep time. We did this off the cuff,
Yep.
off the cuff. But I wanted that for this interview. I
Yeah.
wanted you to not be prepared. I wanted you to be able to come in and roll right off your feet. And you rolled right off your
Yep.
feet. You did very well. Thank you so much. It was an honor talking with you. I
Thank
enjoy
you.
our conversations. This will be up on Monday. Let's see, Monday, the 22nd of September. My guest today was Stephen. He is our co host over there at This Uncanny Earth. He's quite the busy man. He's working on college and he has a job. So he's out there hustling and grinding for it. So once he gets situated in what he's comfortable in doing and he lets some of this information that he's keeping inside of that head of his, however large it is. No, I'm kidding. I love you. I'm looking forward to see what you produce. I'm looking forward to see what your brain produces because you got some pretty out there ideas.
Yeah.
Some somewhat fringe, but not maniacal.
If I
And
might
I can respect
say
that.
very
Please,
quickly,
please.
they made us take a test in college the other day, like a
Mhm.
skills assessment test for jobs and stuff. And thinking quickly on my feet was actually one of my specialties.
And you did very well today. I'm very, very pleased with this episode. I like how because it you don't have a chance. You
Yep.
know what I mean? I don't mean that meanly, but you don't have a chance to prepare.
Yeah.
Talk to me. We're just talking like we are. We're friends, and this is how this should be.
Yeah.
This is how talking to people about faith should be. Not one time do we have a disagreement. We may not see the way to it the same,
Yeah.
but I respect you as a friend and I respect your beliefs. And
And
that's something we need to do more. We need to be nicer to each other, more loving to each other, not get in these little tight-knit groups and then treat everybody else like they're outcasts
yeah.
and you're special. The one thing I don't like about Christianity is the way is how vain it is. About how I'm better than you because you're going to an eternal torture, which I'm happy you're going there. What? It doesn't register with me. I can never
Yeah.
be happy seeing someone burning in flames for eternity. I just don't think that is what God wants. And listen, people will come for me for that, and that's okay. I will stand my ground. That's all. I will stand my ground. Thank you, Stephen, for coming on and talking
Of
with
course.
us and being the best that you can be. We will catch up with you next time. So thank you, Stephen, once again, and I hope you have a great night.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. That was Steven from This Uncanny Earth, a fantastic friend and a good guy. Go check out what he's got going on. And we'll see you next week for another episode of The Visitor. God bless. So.